All right. So we're in a this the classes we're going to be going through here are we're just going to continue to review. Shit, I was talking about something and you couldn't hear anything. Haha. I just told you the secrets to the world. Too bad. All right. So let me try all of that again. Too bad you didn't hear that. Anyhow, so we're now in class 4. You have a total of 6 more classes left to have finished all the ACI courses, the the content, all the new content. Um, and I've been extensively studying this, over the last couple months and trying to understand like what is really the deepest points of the mind only school that are designed to help us. And more importantly, how it's designed to help your students. Like I want you all to start thinking about I saw a let me see, let me back up a little bit. I saw this an interview this weekend about this sort of state of therapy and the state of mental health across the world. And there were different points of view, and they were like every great book that they talked about, the next one then criticized the next one, right? So it became this sort of like ongoing critique of why some things were working and then why other things were recausing the same problems. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. But what, like, I'm just waiting for, like, what is your solution? And by the end of the interview, the guy said what he believes is that the point of the overindulgence of many of these modalities, whether we're focusing on our childhood trauma or we're, working to release pain or we're looking to, you know, divorce ourselves from our own suffering. All of the focus is on me, meaning yourself, right? And the guy was proposing, he said, what if we stopped thinking about ourselves so much? Doesn't mean we don't think about ourselves. But what if we stop thinking about ourselves and ruminating about our pain, our suffering, our the reason why, we have certain behaviors in our life. And then more focus on other people and what they need. And I was like, oh, thanks, Buddhism. Thanks for making yourself known. Right? Oh, the secret from 2,500 years ago that we just discovered today. Right. But it's the same dialogue. It's really literally the same dialogue that the Buddha was having 2,500 years ago. It's the same dialogue that, you know, translating Pabonka Rinpoche's emptiness chapter, the ways in which we think about ourselves, the way that we take ourselves to be individuals, the way that we take ourselves to be an I, like me, like It's the me, and it's the me epidemic. And it's not anything different. It's not any, like, we're not different than people 2,500 years ago. And that we're all still looking for the solutions, the next greatest thing, the next biggest thing. Oh, I finally have the thing that's going to help. Get it? Right? You know, and so, like, all of these investigations of understanding how we become ourselves, like, how do we become me? How do I become myself? And what are the problems with that? That's what we're investigating, and that's what we're investigating in the mind only school. Like, we're trying to break apart the complexity of me and all the different techniques and shadows that we obfuscations that we create to prevent us from understanding how we become ourselves, how our suffering becomes ours. And then how do we ruminate about it? Like, how do we spend so much time thinking only of ourselves and our pain, you know, and it's real. Of course it's real. But the mind only school breaks it apart into digestible pieces. You know, it breaks it apart into, what am I doing that's facilitating an obsession of me, 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 me. Okay. And of course, you're the only perspective you have, really. You're the only perspective you you're the only one that can see yourself. Right. So it makes sense. Then we have these, then all the things that happen, like, we have to take care of ourselves. Like, how many people have sleep problems? Got a couple hands raised. All right. You know, why? Like, what, the thing that helps our bodies the most, we have problems doing. You know, I have difficulty sleeping at times. Waking up, and then what happens when you wake up, in the middle of the night? What do you think about? Right? You just think about yourself, right? You ruminate about your problems. Like, how am I going to solve this problem? Like, the brain is designed to solve problems. The brain doesn't like uncertainty, right? So then it ruminates, right? But if we can break down what are the structures into simpler pieces, and that's what the mind only school is doing, is breaking it down into smaller pieces, then we have a sense, then we might have the ability to catch ourselves in it. Like the kuntak, right? The imaginary thing, the thing that doesn't exist by any definition. What is that? Right? What layers are we putting on reality that are just not true? And what would be a truer relationship to reality? I think it's a good question. What would be that clearer relationship? You know. So when the Bodhisattva went to the Buddha and said, "Buddha, I don't understand why you seemed to contradict yourself. Like, why did you say things one way and then say them a different way?" And so he gave 5 different things and explanations that he was like, well, that's not exactly what I meant. Right? There were 5 things. Right? And the first thing was about, some things exist by definition and some things don't. Right? which is the whole thing about the mind only school that we're focused on primarily in this course, which is what did he really mean when he said nothing exists, right? And then we get to the three attributes, which we're going to talk about again today in a deeper way. Yay, awesome. But then there were four more, right? There were four more things that the Buddha said that the Bodhisattva was concerned about. And he said, well, first, nothing that exists ever grows. Nothing that exists ever stops. All existing things are at peace, or all existing things are extinct, right? And all existing things have gone completely beyond the state of grief, right? And you're just and this person was like, Buddha, I don't understand. It was like, I don't understand what that means, because you're basically saying, well, nothing is any of this. But then in other places you said, well, look, all of these things are. All of these things have some kind of existence. What did you really mean? Like, what did you really mean when you said that? And so in the last class, we got through two of the four. Okay. We got through the idea that nothing ever grows and nothing ever stops. Okay. And what did we really mean by that? And that's why we have those three attributes: the kuntaks, the shenwangs, and the yondrups. Constructed things, dependent things, and totality. Right? And so when we say nothing that exists ever grows, he's like, well, actually, what I really meant was kuntaks and totality. Those two things don't grow, right? Because constructs aren't changing things, right? They're put on to things, but they're not changing things. Emptiness doesn't grow, well, because emptiness is an unchanging thing, right? But dependent things grow, right? They grow by definition. They're not even a projection. Okay. This is mind only school. Get yourself out of your middle way, blah, blah, which is, take off that hat, right? And so constructs, the kuntaks, they don't change. Emptiness doesn't change, but dependent things do. Of course they're changing. Duh, they depend on other things. That's what I really meant. And then everyone goes, oh, well, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Like the sun comes up and then it illuminates the ground, it warms it up, the seeds are in the ground, and then the trees come out, right? What I call them as trees or sun, those are kuntaks. But as themselves, as dependent things, yeah, they're just doing their thing over there, right? It's not exactly how it is, but it feels relaxing, actually, to me. Like, I don't feel like I have any control over the sun or wars or assassinations or, parties and things like that happen, right? They're just happening, right? They're just out there. They're just happening. What I call them and all those things those are constructs, right? But I don't really have control of those things. They're just dependent on other causes. The same thing with stopping. Nothing ever stops. Well, no, kuntaks don't stop, and neither does emptiness. They go out of existence. We've talked about it. But they don't stop like a changing thing stops, right? I was driving to Flagstaff yesterday, and the trees along the side of the road, some of them are dying slowly, right? You can watch them slowly die. You can watch a body slowly die. You can watch something you built slowly crumble, right? It doesn't just crumble in a second. I mean, even if it falls down right away, it's still stopping, right? It's like you can watch the process of stopping, right? But constructs don't stop, and neither does emptiness in the way that we mean by stopping. Does it go out of existence? Yes. And we'll talk about that in a little bit later. And it's the same thing with the number 4, right? I'm just going to show it to you on the screen so you can, oops, right? Everything is extinct from the beginning, okay? Shiva, which also means peace, okay? But what do we mean by peace, right? Everything is peace, right? What does it mean to say everything is at peace? What picture did I use, right? Okay, I used the picture of the dinosaurs, right? The dinosaurs are extinct, right? It's not exactly what we mean by extinct, but what we mean by it is that everything from the beginning, summa, right? Everything from the beginning is free from the mentally afflicted side of things. They're free from afflictions, their causes, and their results. Okay. What does that mean? Right. The vast majority of our existence, of our being, is tied up in negative emotions. Right. So when the Buddha said everything is from the beginning is free of mental afflictions, or is at peace, what do they mean? What does he mean? What do you think it means? What about kuntaks? Are they free from the mentally afflicted side of things? Yes. It's the same, like literally, it's the same argument for all of these, because kuntaks are not mental afflictions. Kuntaks are just constructs. Same with emptiness. Emptiness is at peace, right? Emptiness is unchanging. What is not free of that? Well, dependent things. Everything else, because dependent things are suffering things, mainly. Okay. So it's really the same argument. Okay. All these things that the Buddha said, like, oh, it's everything is peace, right? What the heck does that mean? Well, kuntaks and totality, kuntaks and emptiness, well, they are. But really, when we're talking about dependent things and suffering things, I didn't mean that. Those things are still mentally afflicted. Those things are still subject to change. You see. And then and then the last one is exactly the same thing. Everything is by its nature has gone beyond grief. Right. And it's exactly the same argument. Right. Rang Shinki, Young Soon. I spelled that wrong. Sorry. There we go. Let's go back to the corrected version. Rangshinge Yongsu Nan Len Nian Ledepa. Lendepa. Okay. Everything by nature, Rangshinki, is completely Yongsu, free from grief, nirvana. Everything is in nirvana. All right. Right. Which is, again, the same thing, right? You got a happy baby, right? you know, our babies beyond grief or anything beyond grief, right? You know, which is, changing things are not, dependent things are not beyond that, right? But what we mean, again, are that constructs are and emptiness is too, right? They're devoid of those two things. So it's really like the idea here is for us to understand and break apart. And we're going to learn today, what does this breaking apart into these three aspects do for us? Like, what does it do for your understanding of yourself? What does it do for your understanding of me-ness, the me? What does it do for you? And how does it get you to understand how seeds work? How does it get you to understand how emptiness functions for you? How does it help you change your world, change your thoughts, change your emotions? How does it help you when you're stuck? Right. And honestly, it's a it's a process. It's a being able to capture how does it catch yourself and be aware of yourself in that moment when you're being like, okay, what is the not real part of this right now? Because it all feels very real, right? It feels so real that even if you say to yourself, oh, that's just a kuntak, good luck. Right? You can think it. So I'm sorry, I was the coyotes are going to bed and they're going to bed right under my house. And so they're making a lot of noise. I'm sorry. I'm just listening to them. Um, so the main question that I always have is, here's all the theory, and how do we use it? And how do we use it when we're having a bad day, or we're stuck in certain emotions, or we're stuck in certain perspectives? And part of it is just recognizing it over and over again, right? So we'll go into that. We'll get a little. And so another way of saying all of those things, like, and you have to think about it. I've given you the structure, you just have to think about it. Is that when we say things don't start, things don't stop. Things are free of, our things are always at peace. Things are beyond grief. What we mean is that changing things don't start without causes, right? And changing things don't stop without their causes. They're not mixed up with mental afflictions without their causes, right? So like, we have to think about it as how they're only related to those things because of their causes, right? And then the middle way school comes in and says, well, wait, but how do you get a kuntak without a cause? Right? How do you get the name that you put onto it called pen? How do you get that? Right? And that's where it kind of breaks down a little bit. But we're not necessarily asking that question. We're trying to describe how is it that your obsession, right? Your sadness, your pen, right? Whatever it is, gets called what it is. And then you start to believe that it is that. Right? We're talking about the structure of the way it looks so we can understand what it's not. Right? So the trick of the mind only school is for you to not necessarily analyze every little micro detail of why, but is to describe how it is that your mind is doing what it's doing. Because it's not that different. Like if you're thinking about the upper middle way and you're talking about mental images, a seed opens in your mind, and then that image, which is an unchanging, perfect image, then gets put onto the raw data that's outside of yourself, and that becomes the pen. How did the image get there? Well, that's one thing, but it doesn't matter. Like the image is there. You're looking at an image. You're looking at an image of a pen. You're looking at an image of your sadness. You're looking at an image of your grief, your loneliness. And then you're acting and reacting to it like it is loneliness. It is despair, right? And that reaction then puts it back and then plants it again. So what we're trying to understand is how is it working descriptively so then we can get to a place to then start changing all of it. All right. So let's get into the description of how does this all work. So when we're, no, I messed it up. Okay. When we're talking about dependent things, hold on, let me get my notes up here. So this is one of the classes where I need to make sure I have all of my notes because it's very, very subtle. So now we're going back to the 3 attributes. All right. We just did all those other 4. Let's go back and review. What are the 3? Come on. I know you're all like, oh God, this sucks. This is boring. What's the first one? Turn on your microphones and yell it out. If you don't know what the first attribute is, where have you been?
Kundak.
Thank you. Finally. Okay, good. A kuntak, right? Constructs. Right? What's the second one?
Dependent things.
Dependent things, or in Tibetan,
Shenwang.
shenwangs, right? And then thirdly, we have yongdrups, right? Totality. Okay, those 3 things. Good, good, good. You should be walking around being like kuntak, shenwangs, yongdrups, right? Turn it into a song. Okay. So these 3 things, 3 attributes, how do they relate to each other now? Like we've talked about it several times. So now we're going deeper. How do they interface with each other? So the first one is that so I put a picture here. Hopefully it helps. We use the word they use is arena. So we start with shengwangs, right? We start with dependent things. All right. Draw pictures. This will help you. Draw pictures of what's happening so you can catch yourself doing it. We start with shengwangs here. This is the arena in which the constructing state of mind functions. All right. You have a whole bunch of things in the universe. dependent things. And then your mind shows up and you're like, hi, I'm Tim. Right? And I'm walking around the world, right? And I'm looking at things, dependent things that are just things that are not, they're not yet things for me, right? They haven't been constructed yet, but they're just hanging out there. They're doing their things. The planet is spinning. The coyotes are running around making noise, sleeping under my house, which I'm going to have to kick them out, right? All of these things, right? They're just there, but they're not yet perceived, right? The question of is if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound, right? Well, the trees are falling in the forest whether someone's there or not, according to the mind-only school. But there's no mind there perceiving it, and the mind hasn't constructed anything yet. So the arena, like the world, right? Here's a gladiator arena, right? Or horse racing or something like that. All the things that are happening in it, right? Your mind has yet to give it names or constructed anything. So that's the first thing that's going on with dependent things. It's like this is what they are the things that you're thinking of with the constructs, right? You haven't yet put a construct on it yet, but those are the things that are just hanging out there. So then another way of thinking about it is that dependent things are the objects toward which the construct is applied. They are what you apply your words and thoughts to. They're the ones that receive the labels. So in this picture, right, you have a thing, right? You have this kind of cylinderish stick that has some kind of color to it, right? And then you put the name pencil on it, right? It gets stuck onto it. Or you put the label onto the color yellow, the feature of the pencil, or the color, pink, and that goes onto the eraser. So like you can imagine you're just like throwing sticky notes onto these objects. Like, oh, the pen. All right, cool. Pen, right? You're putting a note on it, calling it a pen. Or you're being like, oh, the color yellow, which is a feature of the pen. Or the color pink, or the eraser, or the cylinder, right? You're putting those sticky notes onto those labels, onto the dependent things. It's not a cylinder until you call it a cylinder. But in the mind-only school, they'll say the cylinder was already there. Okay. And so here's a distinction between the mind-only school and the upper middle way. And I've heard it several times, and I'm not 100% sure about what I'm going to say right now. I mean, I know the words I'm going to say, but I'm not exactly 100% sure if this is what the mind-only school believes or not. But it seems like to me that the mind-only school, the difference would be that there is a pen there already. It's a changing thing. It's a changing thing, but you haven't called it a pen yet. So it's not functioning as a pen yet, but it's there as a pen. Right? And it's not in the sense available, like you would say in the upper middle way, to be anything depending on who's looking at it. Like the upper middle way would say, well, there's nothing there, first of all, until someone perceives it. And secondly, It's certainly not a pen until a human perceives it. But if a dog perceives something different, it could be a chew toy, right? It's a chew toy and a pen at the same time, if there's two beings looking at it and functioning that way, right? The mind only school would say a shengwang is a dependent thing depending on its causes and conditions, but it exists by definition. So there is a pen there, but it's not a pen yet until you put a construct on it for you. And this is kind of how we think, actually, right? Generally, we think that pen came from a factory, right? We haven't called it a pen yet. We haven't labeled it pen. We haven't constructed it as a pen yet. But there's some kind of primordial pen, I would say. Maybe that's a good way of putting it. There's a primordial pen hanging out there, dependent upon its causes and conditions. And then when you come along in the construct, you look at it and then the construct happens. Okay. Just stick with it. All right. And then the third thing about dependent things is that they are a changing things. They are a changing thing, right? So when we're thinking about the way that constructs relate to dependent things, is that in one way, the dependent thing is the arena in which the construct is happening. Secondly, is that the dependent things are the object towards which the construct is applied, the words and thoughts, the one that receives the labels. And then thirdly, they're changing things. Okay, dependent things display changingness to us. All right. So how does this work? Right. And that's the idea, because there's no automaticness about the baby calling Tashi. Like if you're a parent and your baby came out and you were like, and everyone was like, oh my God, it's Tashi. Like I've been waiting, like the nurses, the doctors, your spouse, if they're there, right? All of those things. Right. There's nothing about that baby that says, oh, I'm Tashi. But what happens is after the second day or so, you give it the name Tashi. And then that blob of flesh and bones that cries and poops, right, becomes Tashi, and it becomes so correctly Tashi that no one ever questions whether it's Tashi or not. This is why it's so difficult to go visit your parents. Because you, Tashi, Tim, whomever, are not the Tashi that you were when you were 18, 16, 12 years old. Right? The conception that your parents have of you as Tashi or Laura or whatever your name is, you're not that person anymore. You have a different conception, right? And so those conceptions come in to get challenged, right? I'm going to see my parents tomorrow, right? I'm like, they're already doing annoying things, right? Why do I get annoyed about my parents' conceptions, right? Why do I have a construct that opens up that goes annoyed, right? Why? Like what? Like why? Like we have 2 days with everyone. Like we're having a family, you know, families get together for primarily two reasons: weddings and funerals. Right? That's what we say, right? You know, everyone gets together, right? And this is that we're going to a funeral this week, right? But then, you know, my brother texted me yesterday and he's like, He's like, oh, don't forget to bring something nice because mom wants to do family pictures. And I was like, no. Like there's an Office episode where Michael Scott's like, no, no, no. And I was just like, we have 2 days together. Why do we need a family picture? We did a family picture 6 months ago, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And then I was like, and then I acted like a child for like 5 seconds. I'm like, I don't want to go home now. You can go do that all by yourself. I'm going to stay, like for 5 seconds. Like, oh my God. Right. And I was like, what construct am I putting onto this? Yes, my mom is there and she's a changing thing and she's 70, I don't know, 76, right? Right. And all of a sudden I'm putting all these kuntaks onto it, right? Mom is this, mom is that, mom is annoying, mom, right? Like, you know what? I'll probably appreciate all of these pictures in 20 years when mom is dead and I'm 76, 30 years, right? And then I'm like, oh, I really miss everybody. And I see the picture that we took that I was annoyed about when my godfather died, right? Like, you know, and then I'll probably have a different kuntak that comes out, right? But it's what's flowing out of me, all of these constructs. Like, why do I have to be annoyed? Why do I have to see mom this way? Like, I don't have to. Well, my constructs are forcing me to see it that way, right? But there is no mom who is there that is called annoying mom that wants to take pictures every 6 months, right? There's no, right? So like that's what's happening is we have this thing that happens between the object and the mind, between you, the person, you, the subject, the me, and the thing you're looking at. There's a thing that happens called kuntaks. You're kuntaking all day long, right? And you can appreciate, if you've been studying this for a very long time, how powerful this point of view is. Because I still think there's a mom out there who's like, we gotta take pictures. We can't just enjoy hanging out. I'm like, the way mom enjoys hanging out is taking pictures, right? Whatever. Right. But there's no, like, I think there's a mom there, right? And then there's a Tim, right? Tim's the little rainbow brain, right? And then all of these kuntaks, the trashis, all the labels, all of the thoughts, all of the words and names that carry meaning are put onto that situation. Is there a mom there? Yes. Is there a brain there? Is there a mind? Is Tim's mind there? Yes. What else is there? Oh, imaginary things called kuntaks. And what are you looking at? You're not actually looking at the mom, the baby. You're looking at your kuntak. You're looking at the imagination. You're looking at the constructed thing that exists between you and the object. And you're interacting with it as though it were real. It's not the real thing, but it's the thing that you take to be real. Because equally you could have many other reactions and thoughts around, oh my God, we have to take pictures. Right? The feeling you have, oh my God, I don't want to go home. God, I really hope mom's not listening. Right? Like all of those things, the feelings, the words, the thoughts that exist between my brain and the baby. right? Those are the kuntaks. They're made up. There's nothing about this baby that's called Tashi. They could easily have been called Natalia or Svetlana or Emily, right? Still would be, right? But the thing is, it's not just the name, it's also the feeling, the, the feelings that you have between the two, which is actually more important. But then what happens when, people disagree with each other, right? And then you have all different kinds of feelings. That way of life is not cool. Judgments, right? And then what we're doing is we're fighting over kuntaks. It's a kuntak battle, right? It's like a lip sync battle, right? Which is really what you're doing, right? Like you're having a battle about things that don't even exist, that are made up. Okay. And if you get subtle about it, you can see how this can help you tremendously. So the constructs are applied towards dependent things. Right. And if you took away the construct, that would be would be the totality or emptiness of Tashi. And this process happens so quickly as you can't even capture it. Okay. It just happens so fast. But if you took away the construct, the things that's not true of the dependent thing, like there's no quality of Tashi in the boy, right? In fact, there's no boyness in the boy either. But mind only school doesn't go that far. That's how you get to emptiness. Remove the Tashi, and then what do you have? What's left? There's a emptiness, right? You have the primordial, mind only school would say you have the primordial dependent thing, the dependent thing that's free of constructs. And that free of construct, empty of any such quality, is its emptiness, which is really close to emptiness. It's very, very close, right? And so the mind only school would say, well, look, there are actually true constructs and false constructs, right? To say that Tashi is a boy, they say that's a true construct. The fact that Tashi is called Tashi, like it exists by definition, that's a false construct. Okay, I'll do it again. There's two types of constructs. And then you apply your mind, your middle way understanding of it, and then, blows up. But that's okay. There's true constructs and false constructs. True construct would say that blob of flesh over there that's crying and pooping, that's a boy, right? But the false construct is the fact that that blob of flesh that's pooping and crying over there is called Tashi by definition. That's a false construct. Remove that, and then you have emptiness. Okay. But we could equally say that about a boy, calling Tashi a boy, right? Is Tashi a boy by definition? And now you have an argument between conservatives and liberals in the United States, and then people get shot over it. Because a boy is a boy, and for some people. right? And then if someone says, I'm a boy, but I'm not a boy, I actually identify as a girl, even though, or even in, or I can change them because of my body parts. Therefore, I'm not a boy anymore. But other people will say, well, you are a boy. And then you have a fight about it. And then people get shot over a word because someone doesn't identify their kuntaks are not boy, their kuntaks are girls, male or female or something like that, right? Just apply to different words. Oh, Tim, but what are you saying that like boys aren't boys anymore? It's not what I'm saying. Or girls aren't girls. That's not what I'm saying. But understanding that what it means when you say someone is a boy or a man or a woman, it's just like this. Oops, it's just like this. Okay. And so then people hold on to these ideas and they think that they exist by definition. And then they're willing to go to the death for it because someone else has a different construct going on. Or you try to change other people's constructs. Oh my God, now we have to have a fight about this because what you say as a man and what you say as a woman is different. So we should fight. Oh, oh, one person is one religion and the other person is a different religion. My God is this and your God is that. So I'm going to kill your country because your country doesn't believe in the same religion that my country believes in. See how big it gets very fast. You think you think boys are boys and girls are girls. And that's why there's war. Okay. But Tim, there are differences. There's physical differences. There's body part differences. My favorite line from Kindergarten Cop with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Boys have penises and girls have vaginas. Like a little 5-year-old, right? Like, sorry, interpreters, good luck. Right? It's like a 5-year-old saying it. Well, that's the difference between people. So we label people based on body parts. Okay. And then body parts make up a certain types of behaviors in certain ways you're supposed to be. Oh, but hormones are different, Tim. Okay. I didn't say there weren't differences. I didn't say that there weren't patterns. I didn't say that, you know, I didn't say those things. Those things are there. But the way that they're there is you don't understand the way that they're there. Right. And then we get into arguments about, what makes for a woman, what makes for a man, what makes for equality, what makes for equanimity. And if people get stuck in labels and they think those labels are the things that apply to those objects and those objects are those labels. And if you deviate from what those labels mean, then we have problems. Then we get upset with each other. And then we have arguments about what boys and girls can do or what they can't do. Or we construct societies around it where certain genders have different privileges over other genders. I'm not saying those things aren't happening. You got to be subtle with it. But they're just belief systems. Then people are like, oh, well, look, men are stronger than women. I'm like, really? I know plenty of women that can beat me up. I'm serious, right? I know plenty of women who are stronger than me. So then am I not a man because a woman can beat me up? You see? Oh, I'm not man enough, so I'm going to have all these afflictions about it. I'm going to feel crappy about myself. I'm going to feel like I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable enough because I don't have that. I don't have, the image of man on my body is not man enough because I'm not as strong as other people, whether they're men or women, right? Oh, it has to do with hormones. Oh, well, like you can argue this to your blue in the face, right? But it comes down to tashi. It comes down to tashi, right? There's nothing there that's automatically called tashi. You know, what about societies that where gender is not is there's multiple genders or there's multiple sexualities and they're celebrated and or it's not even an issue, not even a question, right? They're all over the planet, different pockets of it, different historical times. Just do some research, learn about how other societies functioned. We must go back to making everything great again. Go back to what? Go back to Greek times? Go back to the way that the first peoples in the United States lived? Because they had a lot of different understandings of gender and sexuality that people nowadays would be, we got to go back to the way things were back then. Make it great again. What? Like, what are you making great again? Let's just make today great, you know, and make today great by understanding that most of the things that we think are happening aren't happening. They're just kuntaks. You're just kuntaking around all day long. There's no tashi there. That's tashi. There's no name. The fact that it's called tashi is not doesn't exist. You could just stop your life right now, give yourself a new name, right? And then move on. I was I was at lunch yesterday with some friends and they were talking about their neighbor, the high school kid who is identifying as transgender and gave themselves a new name. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What's their name? Azrael. And I'm like, Azrael, that's the name of the cat in Smurfs. Like, that's a cool name, right? And then we talked about how cool it was that like someone you could just rename yourself. Do you have to be transgender to rename yourself? Absolutely not. If you want to be called something else that is an image that better identifies you as who you are, call yourself that. There's no reason why you have to be Maria. You could be something else, right? And so the movement from the mind only school to the upper middle way then goes into it then starts taking apart dependent things. Dependent things start the status of dependent things existing by definition comes into question. And because dependent things don't exist by definition, they're coming from causes and conditions, which are really just coming from the changing of your karma from your own mind stream, then it's possible to change everything. Does everyone know that in the Vinaya in Buddhism, the way you can lose your Vinaya vows if you change your gender more than 3 times? The implication of that is that people change their gender. Okay. And then maybe changed it twice. Okay. And this is the most conservative text in Buddhism, right? So if the Vinaya is telling you, look, well, maybe gender's a question that is something you can question, and you can question all dependent things, right? But the point of it is not to change your gender. If you would like to, I will support you. Give me a call. Struggling with any of these things, give me a call. I can help you. We can talk about it. You can be supported. But that's not the point. The point is that everything can change, including you and your body. Because the whole point is we're trying to get to a place where we can become someone who can help all beings, including those people who are suffering in all the different ways, including the people who believe that things have to be the way they are. Those are the people we're trying to help. That they're so fixed in their kuntaks, they don't even know they're kuntaks. They're so fixed in tashi that they think everything is just tashi. But we have to look at ourselves first. We have to look at how we see how our own tashiness is influencing and keeping ourselves stuck. And when we can soften our view of tashi, then we can soften our view of our emotions and our reality. That's why we studied in mind-only school. It's too much to say everything can change. It's too heavy at first, right? But you can look at your kuntaks. Okay. So the Buddha, oh, you have to, here's my one slide that I said it, but just for shits and giggles, right? This is the, oh my God, it's Tashi moment. Tashi comes out and is like, everyone in the world goes, it's Tashi. Or everyone in the world goes, I mean, literally, we're obsessed as a culture with gender, right? Oh my God, it's a boy. Oh my God, it's a girl. We have gender reveal parties, right? Is it blue smoke or is it pink smoke? And then everybody celebrates, right? Or is it purple smoke? I don't know, or green. Who the fuck cares, right? But like we're so obsessed. We're so obsessed with our kuntaks that we have parties about them. Oh my God, it's a boy. Oh my God, it's a girl, right? Oh my God, it's Marina. There she is. She's Marina from her own side. Oh my God, right? Right? That's what kuntaks are. It's just a surprise. It's a surprise that everything is what it is. It's just Tashi. Okay. So screenshot the oh my God, put it up all over your house, and then recognize how you're just wrong about everything. And then have a good day. All right. So when the Buddha was talking about all of these things, he was also referencing the first turning of the wheel. Because he said, oh, well, actually, what I meant in the first turning of the wheel is that that we have to think of them using kuntaks, shenwangs, and yongdrups, right? The four Arya truths, right? There's a kuntak there, there's a shengwang, and then there's a totality. Oh, what about the 5 parts of the body and the mind, the 5 skandhas, the 5 pungpos, the 5 heaps? Those have kuntaks, shengwangs, and yondrups. Oh, what about the 6? What the hell are the 6? I forget what the 6 are. Oh, the 6 elements. All right. They have kuntaks as well. Oh shit, what about the 12 doors of sense? They have some kuntaks and shenwangs and yongdrups. Oh, oops, we're still on 12. What about the 12 links of dependent origination? Right? The wheel of life. Right? The wheel of life has kuntaks and shenwangs and yongdrups. Got it? Okay, what about the 18 categories? Same thing, buddy. Right? It's basically saying, look, all those things that I presented originally, the categories, the 4 area truths, this and that, and numbers of this, and da 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 da, just apply your mind only understanding now. Just apply this, right? Apply your tashis. They're all tashis, right? There is something there. There is an eye there, but you don't call it an eye. It's not an eye until you call it an eye. I mean, an eyeball or an ear or a nose or a mouth or a tashi or a 4 area truth or the 5 heaps or the 6 elements or the 12 links of dependent origination or the, or the 18 categories. What happened to my 18? Come on. I lost 18. 18 disappeared. Okay. Just apply the same thing. And so for you, as your growing mind only mind, start looking at the things that way. Anytime you hear the 4 area truths, there's no 4 area truths that are not coming from a kuntak. Oh, did you think that when you see emptiness directly, you're going to experience the 4 area truths as something self-existent? That's the most ridiculous thing anyone could say. But you think it. You think that the 4 area truths are self-existent, right? You don't even realize there's a kuntak being put onto it, right? You're trying to see something that's not even there. You're trying to have an experience where you can put a kuntak onto something that wasn't even there to begin with. Now I'm flirting with the upper middle way. My apologies. Let's go back. So when you're applying a construct, right, you can, and so this is just another way to like put yourself around this, is that you can apply a construct to both the essence of the object or by some feature, right? So let's go back here. Where is it? Come on. There we are, right? You can put a kuntak on the essence, right? Pencil, right? Or to some feature about it itself, right? Like the yellow or the cylinder, right? Same thing with the Arya truths, right? You could say the first truth of suffering is the first Arya truth is the truth of suffering, right? You're applying that kuntak to the whole thing, the essence. But if you're defining the truth of suffering and you say the truth of suffering, to say is you have to realize is happening to you, right? As a quality of the truth of suffering, a feature that has a kuntak as well. Okay. We were talking about objects. Now we're talking about realizations in your mind. Same principles apply. There's a mind that perceives the truth of suffering and then calls it the truth of suffering. There is a dependent thing there. The realization is there, but then it gets called the truth of suffering or any of its features, like something someone has to realize. It's a subtle point, but it's not just enough in the mind only school to talk about outer objects. It's think about concepts, ideas, thoughts, emotions, feelings. Those are kuntakable as well. All right. All right. So last thing in this class is we're going to talk about when we're talking about emptiness. What do we mean when we say that something is empty of something else? Like when we say something is devoid. All right. There's two ways that we can understand that something is empty of constructs. And which way is more correct to think about it? All right. And so we have to understand what does it mean to have an absence, like a simple absence of something, like something isn't there, or like literally a simple absence, like there is not there's not another human in the house, right? My house. It's just me, right? There's an emptiness, right? There's a absence. Like there's nobody else here. It's just me by myself. It's so lonely in here. Okay. So lonely, right? There's an absence. Like there's no, I don't know, there's no trumpet in the room, right? There's no mother in the room, right? There's an absence, like a simple absence, something that's not there. Right. And so, like in Tibetan, we say mepa, like it's not there, it doesn't exist. Or that's the first kind of absence. There's something not there. Like there's not a chair in your room, right? There's not a dog. There's not a mother, right? There's not whatever's not there, right? And then the second way of thinking of an absence is a fact that something is not something else, right? That, for example, like shengwangs, those dependent things, are not the self-existent things that our constructs make them out to be. Okay. I'll say it again. One is a question of absence, of not being there. Like there's no chair in this room. There's no human in this room. And then there's an absence of identity where something is not what you think it is. Like dependent things are not the self-existent things that your constructs make them out to be. Right. Like let's use this because we've been using it a lot. And like a boy, right? You use the word boy to put onto some kind of shengwang. And then you think that's a self-existent boy, and you think it should behave like a self-existent boy. And it should do self-existent boy things. Right? You think that's a woman, right? And woman should do self-existent woman things. Get a bunch of I don't know what it's like to hang out with a lot of women who are complaining about men, but I know what it's like to hang out with a lot of men complaining about women. Because all women do this, right? It's the most infuriating conversation. I leave. I just don't. I think it's the dumbest thing. It's like, oh my old ball and chain, like or like the guy picks up the phone and has a conversation with his partner, his wife or something, and every like hangs up the phone, and all the guys just nod and then go, "I get it," right? Fuck, I hate that. Excuse me. Like, oh, all wives are the same, right? Oh, all husbands are the same. They are, right? Utta's like, yeah, they are, right? If all wives and husbands are the same, why do people have wives and husbands? Because that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in my life. If it's all the same, why, and it's all like the same problems, why do you want the problem? So you can go out with your guys and complain about why your wife is the same as everyone else's wife. Just like it hurts me to even, right? But that's how it works. We think wife means that. We think husband means that. We think partner means that. We think these things mean these things, and that's how we're supposed to behave in them. And then we feel stuck and trapped. Or we just resign ourselves like, oh, well, that's what it's like to have a partner. That's what it's like to have a husband or a wife. That's just my life from now on. It's going to suck. Right now, I get to go out with my guy friends and complain about my wife. What? That's so fucking stupid. But that's what we all do all the time. We put kuntaks onto shengwangs, and then we take the shengwang to be the self-existent kuntak that we put onto it. So of course your wife behaves that way because the word wife to you means those fucking things. Excuse me. We all agreed what wife means. We all agreed what husband means. So therefore, your wife or husband is going to behave that way because that's the word you put onto it. It's so dumb, but it's what we do. And then we have emotional reactions to it. Like, or if something looks like what the word means, then we immediately make it that way, even if it's not that way. And it functionally is that way for you at that point. Too late. It's too late. You've already made your wife wifey, and she's going to behave that way because you made her that way. That's your fault. That's not her fault. And then we can get into why people react that way and what's the underlying fears and emotions and things. But all of those things have kuntaks too. Okay. So the idea of things having an absence, it's not just an absence of things coming from your own side. Okay. Think of it in terms of identity. It's not, it's absent of being the self-existent thing that you made it out to be by virtue of the construct that you put onto it. I made wifey. I made husband. I made boy. I made girl. I made desire, right? Because I have all these different types of labels on things, then my desire has to be a certain way too, right? Then guilt, then shame, etc., etc., etc. Okay. We're just talking around. And so when we're talking about emptiness, is that nothing has the identity of being the name that you put onto it. So what we're doing is we're not disputing the existence of the construct. Okay. We're not saying that the construct is not there. We're saying it's there. The fact that this is a pen that we call a pen is there. Okay. What we're disputing is the identity of that construct. The fact that we call the pen a pen that exists by definition from its own side. You see? So we're not disputing that something is there. Your construct is there. Boy is there. Girl is there. Man is there. Woman is there. But what we're disputing is what that means, the identity of that object based on the construct. And then what also then gets all even trickier is, oh shit, when I say a man, what do I mean by that? And when you say a man, what do you mean by that? Now our constructs mean different things. And now we're fighting about something that, first of all, doesn't have to be called that. And then second of all, what we use is the same word means something entirely different. Like the expectations that one has of somebody else based on words, right? Someone should behave a certain way because they are that person. They have that identity. They are partner. They are wife. They are husband. They are a girl. They are boy. They're man. They're woman. They're an adult. They're a child. They're Mexican. They're American. They're Ukrainian. They're Russian. They're Japanese. They're Palestinian. They're white. They're black. They're yellow. They're red. Think about what all of those words mean to you. And then when people say, well, you use a certain word, and so therefore you're racist or you're sexist. People are just kun talking. Right? And they can't control it. But when you understand, yes, when you understand what your kuntaks do to other people, that's where compassion comes in. That's where we enter in.